Thank you for joining our podcast. The topic today is, can you be happy without a love partner? And if you have a partner, is it wrong to have expectations in your relationship? So let's talk about expectations for a moment. And I'm sure many of us have different view on this. Expectation is a great thing. It shows you value yourself and you have standards. And it is fair to have fair expectations. As a couple, it's important to sit down and agree on specific things you expect the other person to have and learn how to manage expectations in your relationship. We see expectations become a problem in a relationship. So we need to remember to separate relationship with the problem within the relationship. Because just because you are having issues doesn't mean the relationship itself is a problem. But somehow we want perfect relationship. We are perfectionists. And that can often bleed unrealistic expectations. And so such expectations will bleed in all your relationships. So the right thing to do will be to know and to discuss what expectations each one of you have. And look at how you can grow yourself instead. Because your partner is a separate person with separate strengths, separate weaknesses. And just as you want to be loved and accepted for your whole self, so does he or she. Relationships tend to prosper when each has their self-time, maintain a level of independence within their own selves, their own lives. I believe that we each need our me time. We all know a couple or two who constantly complain and argue or have conflict. And maybe that person or that couple is you. Maybe you argue so frequently that it becomes the norm. But is this really what to expect in a relationship? That's supposed to bring you joy and companionship? That will provide you to be happier, more peaceful? So some expectations in a relationship can cause problems that can end up breaking the relationship. Because what we presume a relationship will look like tends to shape our contribution to the partnership. So one comes with their own expectations of how their relationship is going to look like, and then the other person also has their own, and if they don't match, a conflict arises. Because they don't always match up to the other person's thoughts. And this becomes the birthplace of complaints, arguments, and bickering. Often we don't treat our relationship aligned with what we want or wish. And what I mean by this is that we know that we want a beautiful, colorful relationship, but we don't want to do the work to keep it that way. Why is that? We often argue about small things, like who folds the towels better, I too am very finicky about the towels, how they fold it, and they have to be white, not off-white. So if I've been using it for a while and it's no longer white, off it goes. But we argue about small things. Who leaves their clothes on the floor? And so regardless of what we like or what we don't like, does any of that make either one right or wrong? Probably not. Just because you believe something to be a certain way does not mean you are right. And so, looking at that argument after some time, you could look back and say, what was the argument really about? Was it really about the towel? How it was folded? Was it really about the clothes on the floor? And if it is, it often seems not worth the turmoil. And so the right thing to do would be to set boundaries and stand out on what you want out of a relationship. Discuss it. And never compare your relationship with others. And realize that every person is unique. And that should be at the forefront of anything you think of or want out of your partner, that we are all very unique beings. So you or both can try not to create a circular loop where neither party is heard, leaving both feeling defeated. And also watch if you are always, notice I'll use the word always, arguing or complaining about the same thing because neither of you are willing to listen, to address the issue and move on. Learning how to manage expectations in a relationship is not a one-time deal. It requires nurturing. If you had a garden that you water once and never again, will it really bear any fruit? So what you need is a nurtured relationship. Now, to really have a good foundation, your partner should first like you as a person. Give it time to both know each other before deep feelings develops. Expectations in a relationship form the basis of whether or not the partnership works for both people. By shifting your mindset, your relationship can become happier, more peaceful, and more productive. And so, if you both decide to move forward, you make the decision that your partner is able and capable to demonstrate love, appreciation, care, compassion, and empathy in a way that reaches you. When you are hurting, you should trust that your partner will offer a soft place to fall. He or she should be tender with you if you are in pain. From every relationship, you need to establish the basics, the things you can ask with confidence. I think the question to whether you can be happy without a love partner is a choice that each one of us will take. And some find themselves there because they not able to look at themselves as part of the problem and do their personal inventory of how or what they do that contributes to the relationship to fail. So, yes, you can be happy without a love partner, because honestly, some relationships, when you look at them, they're just painful. There's more complaining, more arguing, and less enjoyment. So depending on who you are and what you value most, you may choose you just simply would rather be alone than to be in a relationship that brings more hurt and pain and sadness than enjoyment. If you cannot ask in confidence, affection, compassion, respect, consideration, time, intimacy, interest, it might be that you have low self-esteem, you have insecurity that you would need to address, and address honestly and truthfully. Because we get what we really want when we are honest about what we really want. We don't say one thing when we mean the other thing, expecting the person to read your mind. So when you look at affection, compassion, respect, time, intimacy, generosity, interest, you can both sit down and look at that list and decide what is the most important to each, and focus on addressing those first. So having to ask these things from your partner means it's okay for you to ask for them, because you have both talked and addressed them, and that you know that each person is coming from a place where they can provide these things. There are fair expectations. So having to ask these things from your partner means it's okay for you to ask them, and that is also okay for it to matter to you if they are not available from your partner. You have the right to ask, request, and if not, if they're not being met, it might be a time for you to shake hands and go seek them elsewhere. But the other thing that we need to remember is that whatever it is that we expect or ask or request, it doesn't mean you'll always get this from your partner. You may and maybe not at the level you hope for. Which is why it's very important to discuss the expectations, the needs, the wants, the like, before getting too deep in a relationship. Because once you are emotionally attached to your partner, it's hard for you to pull out. You've already enjoyed and had nice things in the relationship that made you fall in love. And you start thinking of those things. How he walks, she walks, talks, dress, smile, and so forth. And so it makes it harder for you to get over, especially women, I think, especially us women. We fantasize about relationships and how they should be or should look like. And so it makes it harder to get over that and look at the solution, honest solution. Yeah, it will hurt, but it's only for a while and then you move on. Your values and your standards are more important when you go in a relationship, and if they are not met, you have the power and the right to choose. Because I have seen too often many people still not happy even when they are in a relationship. Going back to our topic. Can you be happy without a love partner? So there's individuals, they say they're in a relationship, but they look sad, they complain, and yet they're still there, many months or even years after. And clearly they look miserable So the question is, why not leave? Why not be alone rather than with someone who brings you hurt or pain? And one very important thing to remember is that love if love could be measured, we will find that some have 1 gallon capacity to love and some have a maybe 50-gallon capacity to love. So what I mean by that is when you go into a relationship, if you take time to know this about your partner, where they stand in giving love. Are they the crazy type of love, or is it the peaceful type of love? Or is it head over heels and then slows down to 10 miles when it was 80 miles a month ago? You need to know this about your partner, so that if you are the kind of person who wants a 50-gallon capacity kind of love, or if you are looking for a 1-gallon capacity of love, then you are getting just that. I have heard people say, oh, he loves me too much, or she loves me too much. There's a deep, deep reasoning for that statement. So what they mean is they didn't know what kind of relationship they're getting into. And now they realize, I cannot stand this type of love. It's just too much for me. They want this, they want that, they want to do this and that. They want to go here and there, and I just don't want that. They're too fast for me. And so you are left with, am I asking too much to have you love me in a gallon capacity versus a 50-gallon capacity? Or sometimes you get someone who feels like they're not getting enough love, even though the person is, showing up, being there at the right time, going out, bring flowers and all this stuff, and they still feel like the love is not enough. They want more. And so people who say, oh, he or she loves me too much, they really say it like it's an irritant. But whether it's too much love or less love, you gotta remember that no one is going to feel the void you feel in your heart, whatever it is. Only you can. And the second is, if you are honest about what you want, how much you want, what kind of love you want, then you may have a relationship start on a really good foundation. I think we go back to what they call the language of love. Because when you look at each individual, the way they communicate, their language of love, it may be different. Some people, they're not used to the idea of I love you every second or every day or every week. They tell you I love you when something really big happened. And some, they tell you more often every day. And so it depends on who we are and how are we communicating this love back and forth, this partnership. And so some people are also afraid of heartbreak. They're afraid, they get paralyzed by the idea of their heart being broken, that then they refuse or choose to not take action to end the relationship and walk away, because they're thinking the pain is too much. But then they're still not happy. But we got to go through this because it's part of life. And when that broken heart cracks you wide open, you are needed. It's necessary to be present to that natural opening and closing of your heart. You need to take some time to heal and then ask yourself, what do I need to nourish myself so I can love more or love better? What thoughts and behaviors can I let go that prevents me from growing to open my heart and be more loving? If I wasn't loving enough because of some obstacles or some insecurities or whatever it may be, what is it that I can let go to allow this growth within me? Or what can I forgive in order to love more and be free of pain? Because forgiving sometimes is not forgiving the other person, it's forgiving yourself so you can move on, so you can freely let that pain go. So we can prioritize our judging or our expectations with appreciation, because it gets us in the habit of focusing on the positive, and that lowers the feeling of nagging. They may have not folded the towels the way you wanted them to, but at least they tried to do their fair share by doing something else, which, if you are aware and not always looking for the negative, you would realize, oh, they washed the dishes, oh, they folded the laundry, oh, they emptied the trash, oh, they prepared dinner because you had a long day at work trying to meet that deadline. If you pay enough attention, there's always something to be appreciative about. It can't always be negative. And sometimes you just need to sit and say, what is it that attracted me to this person in the first place? Like, think back when you first met. It probably wasn't their towel folding skills, was it? It was their warmth, their kindness, maybe their charm. and the fact that they made you laugh, isn't it? So if you approach that with what he or she didn't do, you are in for a long, strenuous relationship. There's also a way to bring awareness to your partner without making it sound negative or feel negative. Perhaps you could start by saying, "Hey, baby, I noticed you washed the dishes," or "I noticed you folded the laundry. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate you and your effort. It makes me feel less overwhelmed when I get home from work because, my job at times can be very stressful. Thank you for your help." And especially to men, they love to hear that. I mean, his ears will be that of a puppy and his tail will be wagging like, "What? Did she just say something nice to me, right?" Then if you wanted to follow that with something else that may sound like "Sweetheart," or "Honey," or "Baby," or use the name, "Is there a reason you did this way?" So it's not coming out as negative, like, "Why didn't you do it this way?" or that. You're approaching it from a mindful, thoughtful place. And allow him or her to explain, and then you could say, "I really think it will help me if we do it this way. What do you think?" So it becomes a conversation. A nice conversation. There's no attack, there's no defense in it. And you will notice how this is now becoming a conversation and not an argument. And it doesn't sound like you bickering. Men think women bicker all the time about things. Right? I mean, that's out there thought about women complaining. And as for me, it also took me a long time to use this type of language. And believe me, I do, and it's so wonderful. It feels amazing. But before I could use this language, my ego was like, "Oh hell, I don't care what he thinks of me, because if he doesn't like it, the door is open." And deep down knowing that it will devastate me if he left. But I say it anyway because my ego got in the way. Once I develop a two-way dialogue, how to say things mindfully and not to hurt the other person, many times I would do it just out of despite. Once I realized this dialogue, it was such a relief, because at times I would expect him to read my mind and do exactly as I'm thinking it. And with the clock ticking, I would start to warm up inside. Then shortness of breath. Then the longer it takes him to read my mind, it will get to a boiling point. And there comes bickering. I mean, just stressing myself with my stuff. And sometimes I look at him sitting there watching TV and laughing, enjoying himself, while I sit here and boil. My gosh, it's not a healthy place to be. But we live there. Often, we live there many times. It has become our comfort zone. It It is not a healthy place to be, inside or outside of yourself. It is a poisonous state of being. So for myself, I knew I had to find other ways, because the poison I was drinking, thinking it will kill him, it was killing the person drinking it. Me. So I started, instead of critiquing him, I started being honest with myself. I looked in the mirror every day for 30 days and spoke to myself for who I was at the time, how horrible and unappreciative I was. And first question, I cannot believe this is me doing and saying these things. How can I be such a nasty person and expect him to love me? Would I stay with someone like me if tables were turned? And the answer was no. So I knew I had to change, and I knew what to do. For 2 years I started working on myself, peeling off the layers of stuff, things that were weighing on me about my past, and wearing a mask so people think I'm happy. I realized I was lying to myself, cheating and robbing myself of a good and happy life. I had learned to treat myself with respect, love, and appreciation. I started to face and address my anger, my easily irritable person. And this took long for me to even come to the surface. I'm still working on those layers. And each day, it's a better day. I'm so much better. And I love the fact that I'm now becoming confident on controlling how I let things get to me, how I communicate with my partner, be my husband. If we get to that point where conversation hits up to an argument, I am now able to pause, take a deep breath, and find a way to use kind words and be mindful. And so the good part is this here, that later I'm able to trace back the conversation and see what feelings did I have that rose as I was talking, and what was beneath that, either to make me feel irritated, upset, or angry. So if you are able to follow this conversation, this process, with a reflection, and really be honest, you realize that there is tremendous growth happening in you. A beautiful transformation. And so now I'm becoming this being that whatever it is that may have been an argument, or that was an argument, as we can argue sometimes, I can now go back to every incident and find out what is beneath this reaction, what was beneath that reaction. Because by doing so, I am slowly healing within, peeling those layers, and becoming a better person, a good person. And with each step at a time, blossoming with contentment, with peace, with love and joy. My days are now filled with more joy, more happiness than sorrow or sadness. This I rejoice in. I am reminded each day when I feel the stuff creeps on me, as they often will, that I have the power. I can switch on the happy button at any given time, because I have the ability to choose to be happy, because I will not choose to stay in the sadness, the moping mode. I am not comfortable with inviting sadness anymore. I can only imagine feeling happier, being happy, and feeling joyful. Imagine a time in your life when you were so happy you could almost pee on yourself if you were a puppy. I mean, that kind of happiness. If you could get back there to that feeling of just beaming with joy and hold on to it, and whenever you seek it, you just go back to that moment. You just close your eyes and go back there to that place. It doesn't mean you always feel this amount of joy or happiness. It may go away a little bit, depending on the life challenges. But just knowing you have that power, that you are holding the key to your own happiness, your own joy, your own peace, that is a game changer. I know for a fact that there is a place in all of us where this peace, this joy sits, just for us to reach it anytime we choose to. And so what I hold dearly to my heart is that is a reminder that my mind can only serve and I decide who is the master. I choose. So God, the universe, our source of power, or the oneness, is the one that guides me. That when I get out of the way and allow Spirit to work through me, I remember my function. I remember how I want to function. And I remember to be the embodiment of love, forgiveness, kindness, and patience. So how can you get out of your own way and allow the flow of higher knowing to pour through you today? For every minute of our lives, we are on this path, on this journey. It's a gift. So in order for a relationship to succeed, you have to bring in your power, your values, your standards, your understanding, your patience, and most importantly, your willingness to walk through it. And know that if you don't nurture the relationship, if you sit back, if you rely or believe in stagnation, then there will be no growth in your relationship. And you'll be alone. And so you choose. You have the right to choose. If you've been listening to my other podcasts on the right to choose, how empowering that is. And thank you for listening. This is the end of our podcast. Until next time. Namaste.